only the sound
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our talk, Can Our Work Culture Coexist with Wellbeing? My name is Sarah Cullen. I am the editor of Darc magazine, which is a international publication that specialises in decorative lighting in architecture. I am joined by these lovely ladies. From Designer's Mind, we've got founder Kay Preston, and we have contributing member Cale Gillam, and workplace and sustainability and wellbeing strategist Rhiannon Laurie on the end there. So Designer's Mind aims to break down the stigma around mental health whilst promoting messages of openness and acceptance. It champions change in the design industry and wants to change mindsets around well-being, raising awareness that making time for our physical health is so important for our mental health. The design industry is a stressful environment, often marked by designers who work incredibly long hours to meet tight deadlines, and the pressure to always be on and creative is high, and expectations from leadership, clients, and personal ambitions feed into daily stress designers are challenged with. When working under this pressure, often the simplest of well-being principles gets overlooked. So today we're going to be looking at how the well-being of designers is within the workplace, and how these workplace challenges can be sort of hopefully solved, and we can bring some tips away and some strategies that you guys can take away with you when looking at the workplace stresses. So over the last 18 months, obviously, there's been a lot of added pressure on individuals and finding a healthy work-life balance with many of us working from home. But this isn't a new concept. This is something that's been going on for a long time. I feel like the pandemic has just sort of highlighted it to a lot of people. So starting us off, why is it important to have this conversation now? And then we'll start looking at some of the challenges specifically and some of the things we can take away to help as well.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that introduction, and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I think, as you've highlighted, it's always been important, our mental health, our overall well-being. It's not actually a new topic at all. But I kind of feel, for me anyways, that what the pandemic has done is actually brought it up everyone's agenda. So whether they were aware before, but they knew it was important, but it was kind of one of those nice to have type things. And now it's one of those, okay, we really need to do something about this now. So it's almost like before there was awareness but no action. Now there's the awareness and people want action now, which is fantastic actually. So if there's any silver lining, I think that could potentially be one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that the first time we kind of got together, we were looking at all the different reports that were coming out from Deloitte and the like. And it was obvious that there was a lot of issues in workplaces where employers didn't want to spend a lot of money on their employees. But we look back at that and actually contributing comparatively very little to creating well-being programs, to invite people to not have presenteeism, to actually take time off when they need to be able to communicate effectively, was losing employers so much more money. And there just wasn't an understanding that if you invest in people and you care about them as human beings, as opposed to a cog in the machine, that you can really have positive benefits. And I think now we're starting to get there.
We're starting to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was definitely something that we were seeing in workplace prior to COVID. And then COVID just really sped things up in terms of everyone focusing on health, obviously, and ensuring workspaces were created to support our health and well-being. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So looking at some of the challenges specifically then, what are some of the things you guys have personally experienced and witnessed, and what are the sort of the frequent challenges that you're seeing within the industry that a lot of our sort of colleagues and designers are having to fight against?
Well, I think if I might open this one, my background is actually, I'm an interior designer, but also a health coach. And the reason that I studied that was specifically for Designer's Mind, and I wanted to have a better understanding of our overall well-being and the connection between our well-being and our mental health. And so I think one of the largest challenges that I would open with is because of our work schedules, our deadlines, the way that we work, we often don't have time to prioritize our well-being. So that last quote that we saw from Stephen Bartlett, if we may, sorry.
Go back, yeah.
I think this one speaks volumes, and it's this idea that if we're not making time for our sleep, to switch off in the evening, to eat well, we're grabbing on the go between meetings, we're not connecting with our loved ones, barely even having water sometimes through the day. You know, how many of us have gone to a meeting and realized 2 hours later that we haven't had a sip of water? Going outside, moving. These are really basic things, and if we're not making time in our day, then yes, mental health encompasses many things, and you know, there's lots of life challenges and things that we go through as well, but if we're not taking care of our physical health, how on earth can we expect our mental health to be good? You know, it's kind of one of those no-brainer type things that was really eye-opening to me. Or it should be a no-brainer, but it isn't. And it was eye-opening to me through my health coaching. And as I said, I think this quote says it all. So I would open with that's one of our biggest challenges is that we don't have time or to understand or to prioritize our well-being. So I would open with that one.
Yeah. I think that, so we've been doing Clubhouse talks every week, just going to plug that quickly. If you guys are on Clubhouse, I think it's invite free now.
It is invite free, yes.
So you can come and you can listen to us talk about a bunch of topics every week, and there's a handful of them that have been recurring and recurring and recurring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've listed some of the top ones on the next slide, if you don't mind, Sarah.
Yeah.
And a lot of this, I think, comes out of how we are as designers, is that being a designer is sort of inherently a very passionate field. We all, hopefully, love what we do every day, and we are in it because we like creating things. We like that process of making and breaking and remaking, and the difficulty in that is that there's never really a point at which you can stop, unless you know when to stop. And I think that that sort of mindset is really, really challenging for people in the design industry, because you always want it to be a little bit better, either for yourself or for your client or for your colleagues. Is that there's a lot of pressure coming from, you know, you internally and externally, because, you know, it's your satisfaction with what you've done, but it's also getting paid, having that good client relationship. So sitting in that hierarchy is really, really stressful. So we get things like overworking, having deadlines that you might meet if you work every day until, you know, whatever o'clock in the morning. That's not healthy. And yet we do it because we put these pressures on ourselves and we feel these pressures from other people. And then we start answering our emails at all hours of the night. And all of these things inevitably lead us to be unable to perform to the level that we want to. Is that, like Kay said, is that the 8 pillars of health? Have I got that right?
There's many schools on this. If you Google pillars of health, there's a few different answers.
There are a number of pillars of health.
Number of pillars of health. Yeah.
That sort of start to fade away. So you, like Kay said, you stop eating well, you stop sleeping, you stop drinking water, you stop exercising, and all of these things are so interlinked, is that when our focus is entirely on work, is that we forget how to take care of ourselves, and it's a really, really vicious cycle. So I think a lot of the challenges are, I think, just inherent in who we are as people and who we are as creatives.
Yeah, totally. And just to add to that, as I'm a workplace strategist, so I'll always bring it back to kind of the environment that we're in when we're working. So there are some huge challenges if we're always working or overworking, working too much, our environment is huge. Like, we spend most of our time inside. So we really have to try and overcome the challenges that are presented in the environments we're in, be it air quality or daylight or, you know, just having nature around us. We really need to try and kind of create spaces that are supporting our well-being if we are working as much as we are.
100%. And I think one that we haven't mentioned, but it is on the slide, is technology. And you'll see actually technology shows up again, but for under challenges, it's the way that we use it. And I think, well, for me personally and for many people that I know, technology kind of came into our lives, but we never actually sat to think about how we want to use it. So it manages us instead of us managing our tech. What do I mean by that? Well, how many people have notifications on right now? When you're working, when you're on your computer or on your phone. And what is the culture? What is the email culture like in your organization? If you get an email from your manager, are you expected to stop right away? Well, that could be in the middle of your creative time. And as creatives, that focus time is actually really, really important. And if you're breaking all the time to answer emails or being interrupted, we talked about focus and distractions again in one of our Clubhouse talks. Well, you can imagine it takes approximately 20 minutes to get back in that zone. Well, if you're distracted 3 or 4 times a day, well, there's another hour added on to the end of your workday. What could you have done with that hour? You could have spent it with your family. You could have exercised. So this is why technology is so important and is actually one of our challenges. And I think just for anyone in the workplace now is how do you actually manage it in a way that it's not managing you? I think that one's really, really crucial because obviously as designers, it's a big part of what we do.
And also you can't get away from it on your laptops or your computers because it's on your watch now, and then that buzzes every hour saying you need to stand up and walk somewhere, and it's constant alert.
Absolutely everywhere. Absolutely everywhere. Yep.
So then we've touched on technology, but burnout I think has probably been something a lot of us have experienced during the last 18 months as well. What else can we sort of discuss around the burnout culture and how it's affecting us?
I think that we've spent way too many years kind of fitting our life around work, and I think it's finally time for us to try and fit work around life, and we need to try and make that switch. And it's kind of when we're having all these conversations in the office, you know, the older generations are kind of, you know, kind of more stuck in their ways. They want us to come in and do things the way they've always been done. But I think definitely the newer generations are kind of questioning it now, especially with COVID, and it's time to really flip that on its head and have us all, you know, lean more on our personal networks, our family, our friends, and actually make more time for them, because they are the people and the kind of networks that can help us avoid things like burnout. Whereas if we're spending too much time in the office, too much time around those same people that, you know, represent that stressful thing, it's the wrong kind of dynamic in my mind, I think.
It feeds into itself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of these, I think, you mentioned that vicious cycle that we can so easily get into. And unfortunately, if we're not looking after our mental health and we're not looking after well-being, well, this is where things like burnout can happen. And your mental health can turn into a mental illness, just like a physical illness. And I think it's also, we talked about our always-on culture in design, and technology definitely has a role to play with that. Us as people has a role to play in that we're creatives, and sometimes when we're really involved in a project, we don't necessarily want to switch off. So it's that always-on culture. I think we've spoken about before as well, we tend to react to things. There seems to be there's not necessarily a hierarchy of what's urgent and what's important. We seem to struggle with differentiating those things, so everything feels urgent. So when you're constantly working at this level, you're not taking time for yourself, you're not taking time for your well-being, you're not connecting with your loved ones, this is when burnout can happen. And obviously there's different levels of that, but absolutely it is something that unfortunately I've experienced. I know many, many people in the industry have experienced, and it's a massive challenge actually, and because it can mean that you need a day out, or it means for myself I needed over a month out. So that's a really big challenge, and I think one that can no longer be ignored. I think it really needs to be discussed, and plans in place of how we can help this.
So enough of the negative side of it. Let's now start talking a bit more of the positives and how we can sort of give people something to take away from this session, and what strategies they can implement into helping combat burnout and technology. And what advice have you got for us?
Okay, well, I feel
go on.
I'm so self-awareness. This is one of my favorite ones, actually, and I think this is also one that has come up weekly for us in our Clubhouse sessions. Because again, in our Clubhouse sessions, we run through challenges for that week on that specific topic, but then we try and discuss different strategies as well. And this is one that comes up weekly. So what do we mean by self-awareness? This is really getting to know ourselves. This is really about getting to know what we need. what works for us. Perhaps it looks like, when do you work best in the day? You know, are you a morning person? Are you an evening person? Actually respecting your own rhythms. What do you need for the rest of your life? You know, is it family? Is it, you know, loved ones? What else do you have going on? Really checking in with yourself. Also being aware that we have seasons. We have seasons naturally, just like nature, where we might feel more on than other times. Other times we need to rest. And it's actually respecting that within yourself. So yeah, as I said, this is one of my favorite ones, and we've spoken about at length of, you know, you can journal or meditation or just different ways. Checking in with your energy actually is a really amazing way to build self-awareness within yourself. Your energy level gives you so many clues as to what's going on and whether you need to eat something differently, whether you need to drink water, whether you need to rest. It is such a big clue. So yeah, building self-awareness, I would say, and really recognizing what you need is one of the top strategies.
Yeah, absolutely. And boundaries is also one of those kind of nebulous but omnipresent ideas that we've discussed kind of at length. So boundaries and consent kind of sit in this place where you need to be self-aware of what you are capable of and managing both your own expectations and those of the people around you. I think that not having firm boundaries or being unable to express firm boundaries is what gets us into a lot of these challenges that we face. So if you're not, for example, comfortable telling your manager, I'm in a bad place right now, and I don't think that I can do X, Y, or Z for when you need me to do it, that can be really challenging, because inside that might sound like I'm not good enough at my job to do what they need me to do, when really what it is I haven't slept great for the last couple of days and I'm not doing work to the ability that I know that I can. And when you have that self-awareness, you're able to like express those boundaries better. So I think that kind of feeds itself into having a support network where you feel like you can be open and honest with the people around you, both in your personal life and your professional life. So that you can say, no, I don't believe I need to be working after 5:30. I would prefer to have flexible working hours because I work better from 8:30 to 11, and then I kind of shut down in the afternoon, and then I'm back up on it in the evening. We all have different rhythms in the ways that we work, and finding those things out about ourselves help us set those boundaries. I could go on. I know we only have so much time.
No, you touched on support. Support is so key in maintaining your well-being, and just ensuring that you have all the right kinds of support, be it friends and family. Like I touched on this, we need to flip it if we can. But also when you're at work, you know, do you have that kind of point person, those friends that you can confide in? Do you have you got the right systems in place through HR that can support you? But also just feeling like you're supported by your manager, like you have to be able to open up to them. That's such a huge part of your well-being. But also, again, moving into environment, the way that your environment supports you, your health. So do you have easy access to a gym or a way that you can work out, or you know, daylight, or you know, all the ergonomic seating, all the different ways that your environment literally can support you, which comes back to self-awareness, and just really understanding what your needs are, and then you can create the right kind of support for those needs.
Yeah, and I think all of us have different technology strategies that we've talked about kind of back and forth.
Yeah.
So I think the thing about technology, like Kay said, is that there is good and evil, and we need to understand how it fits into our lives. Like what was the book that we read, Happy Sexy Millionaire?
That was the Stephen Bartlett, yes.
Which was fantastic. So if you haven't read it, please read it. I know it sounds like a silly title, but it's a fantastic book. But it talks in some part about how we are unequipped to see people's lives on a day-to-day basis, and we are unequipped to compare ourselves to others constantly, and we are also unequipped to be pinged with notifications about the world around us constantly. But what we can do is use techniques, and I'll let you get into this a little bit more, to kind of cater that to work best for us, to, you know, have those blocking out free time, for example, saying these 3 hours, I'm going to do this during my day, or I'm going to make sure that my company has something in place where emails shut off at 5:30 on a Friday and they come back on at 9 a.m. on Monday, for example. But there are ways that we can cater technology to make it not quite so overwhelming and not make it so omnipresent that we're detracting from enjoying life in real life.
Yeah, and also using it kind of the other way around to help remind you, okay, time for me now. I know, like, my watch does that all the time. Every hour, it's telling me to do something for me. So it can be helpful that way too, yeah.
Absolutely. That was the one I was thinking that came to my mind is that idea of managing your technology. So yeah, absolutely. Use it as a reminder. If you struggle with, you realize that you've been sat at your desk for 4 hours, use it as a reminder to get up, have a glass of water, go walk around. If that's what you need, absolutely, it can do that for you. Turn off all the notifications, but also it can be good for things like time blocking, can be a really useful strategy, batching your tasks together, really kind of organizing your day. So once you've kind of done that self-awareness piece about what works for you, and then use your tech to kind of really support you. Obviously with your organization's backing, might need support from management. So you can kind of see how a lot of these topics are actually intertwined and they all kind of connect back on one another. But absolutely, it can be used for good. What is the email culture? It's in your organization. It's having that conversation.
Yeah.
And as you said, there's a lot of different options there. Maybe it's turning them off after a certain time, or it's the urgent stuff, you check it once in the morning, but then, everyone understands, okay, this is my focus time, and if you send me an email during focus time, I'm not going to answer it, and that's okay. I will get back to you, in a couple of hours, and that's all right too. But yeah, it's using it, it's finding ways to use it that work for you rather than against you, is really important. And prioritizing well-being. This is obviously a big one too, and prioritizing our well-being. And I think this one for me is as much of a mindset shift within ourselves as a culture shift within our organizations. And it can sometimes feel really counterproductive and counterintuitive when you've got a massive deadline on to take 15 minutes to go for a walk. But I promise everyone in this room that you will feel better. And when you come back to your desk, you will probably perform better and be more productive than if you push through. I can imagine most of us, if not all of us in the room, when we've had a deadline and it kind of reaches that point of 6, 7, 8 in the evening, and who hasn't realized that a task is taking them twice as long, that, you're sitting there at 8 o'clock at night going, how have I only done that much? When if I had done that at 8 in the morning, I would have flown through like this. And that's why I mean by sometimes it can feel counterproductive. We feel like we should be at our desk. No, I have to push through. I have to get this done. But actually, a good night's sleep, a good meal, connecting with your family, coming back at 8 in the morning, probably get that task done a lot faster, a lot more creatively, a lot more focused. But it's shifting our minds, our mindset around this to be able to think like that and to be able to believe that that's true. But that's why I say it's a mindset shift within ourselves that prioritizing well-being is actually will help us as designers, as creatives. We need time out. Creativity, well, for me anyways, doesn't happen in front of the computer screen. It doesn't happen over emails. It doesn't happen when I'm tired. It happens when I'm filled up with loads of energy, when I've eaten really well, when I've had time outside in nature, when I've meditated. That's when I feel my best. But it's that mindset and that culture shift in an organization as well. So I think the two kind of come together on that. But yeah, definite strategy there. Prioritize our well-being. It is not counterproductive. It is only productive.
Just to take that back to kind of like project work and thinking about how we can prioritize well-being in a project, which can sometimes be really difficult because if it's not actually factored into the scope of work, how are we meant to accommodate it? So we've actually started having projects where well-being time will be integrated into the project, which is amazing that that's finally happening. But I just think that even if you have clients that aren't yet doing that, it's worth having that conversation with them right at the beginning and asking the question. Because if you don't ask that question, it doesn't seem like a priority to us. So why should they prioritize it? So I think that's one key strategy, is to really go to your clients and ask for the time. And if they're being responsible and you're not asking for too much, it should be doable.
Yeah, because I remember you were telling us about, you had a client that received a fee sort of after hours and went, we can't possibly, if this is sort of if this is the way that we're going to go about this, we're going to work in normal working hours. And there was that moment of, they do respect that. That's fantastic. Exactly, yeah, because obviously, as a designer, you naturally think, I'll send the email at 2 a.m. They'll think, I'm working extra super hard. But in reality, you send the email to the client at 2 a.m. and their response is, well, we've had a response that is, we can't work with you if you're working at 2 a.m., which was very refreshing feedback. So, yeah.
I think that, one strategy that we haven't spoken about directly, but a little bit indirectly, is managing expectations. Managing expectations with your clients about what you're able to do. So if they come to you at 5 on a Friday and want something for 9 a.m. on a Monday, what does that actually look like? And sometimes it's difficult conversations, but it's having those conversations. But also with management or leadership, same conversation. It's managing your own expectations about what you're able to achieve. I know in the past I am very guilty of putting too much on my plate and then wondering why I can't achieve it all. So it's managing your own expectations, management, and clients. And it's this idea, I think, again, mindset shifts around this, is that happy employee will equal a happier client. Yeah. A better, more creative, more focused, energized designer will equal a happy client, because they're getting more out of their design team, right? But again, it's changing that mindset around that, because we've worked so long that, well, if I ask for something at 5:30 on a Friday, I want it at 9 on a Monday. You guys have 2 days. What's wrong with that? It's like, no, that's not okay.
It's a hard habit to get out of.
It is a hard habit. It is a very difficult habit, I think. Absolutely.
And you were saying before about your different energies and how it's better to do something first thing in the morning. I'm the opposite. That my creativity will switch on at 10 o'clock at night, and I will sometimes not work in the morning because I'm too tired, and it takes me a while to get going. Yeah. But if I'm on a deadline and it's 10 o'clock, I'm bam, straight away, article done. And it's interesting how to balance and maybe set those expectations for your clients and say, I'm not so much a morning person, but I will get this done in the evening. And if you get emails from me at 10 o'clock at night, that's okay. That's my boundary. So it is about the open communication, I guess, between yourself and your client or your employee.
Having people respect you as an individual, right? Yeah. Is that all of us are different. All of us have different ways of working. And you would offer that same respect to someone in your personal life, wouldn't you? If you're like, look, I can't come to this because of X, Y, or Z. And then, oh yeah, of course, don't worry about it. And you would like to think that someone that you work with for projects for years would be able to understand you as an individual and how you work. And so I think it's just kind of pushing outside of the boundaries of this is a work relationship and this is a personal relationship, because all of it is about communication, trust, respect, and honesty. And I think it's just putting that mindset, is that you can't separate the supposed 2 spheres of your life, is that you should interact with people with the same level of understanding in all aspects.
And just starting by blocking your calendar until 11 a.m. and just seeing what people say. That's what I've done, and so far it's been fine, because I naturally work from about 10 till about 7 or 8, because that's my natural rhythm. And no one's questioned it, but if they did, fine, let's have the conversation.
So we've spoken a lot about ourselves as employers, as designers, but taking it from the opposite angle, as the employer or as the sort of corporation, what sort of elements can we incorporate? Just thinking off the top of my head, I saw on Instagram earlier, there was a lighting brand that integrated a hour's yoga session in their warehouse. So they would move the desks out, everyone rolls their mats out, and every employee had the option to do yoga each day within the warehouse. What sort of other techniques or things have you seen that employers could put into place for their sort of offices?
So many things.
There's so many things.
So many things.
So many things. I think, obviously, as designers, we work in a variety of organizations, consultancies, in-house, all sorts, various sizes. So that will obviously be a huge factor in what they're able to do or what they need to do. Because just like self-awareness as an individual, it's really important that an organization then does a similar exercise with themselves and what their needs actually are. And that's going to differ, obviously, from a small boutique firm all the way up through to the large, more corporate international ones. It'll be very, very different. But some stuff they can do. So mental health first aiders, brilliant. Somebody, just like you would have a physical first aider, you know, have somebody. And if you're not large, if the firm isn't large enough, then have somebody in the office that is at least appointed with it. If you don't have HR, somebody that is kind of that person in the office that has a background in this, knows about this, that other people, that you feel you can go and talk to, that you can approach, because not always, unfortunately, do we feel that we can approach our managers, our direct line managers, for whatever reason. So have someone in the office that becomes that person, and then they're able to point you in the direction that you might need to go, or help you facilitate maybe some of those difficult conversations about perhaps you need some time off, maybe you need time to rest, maybe the way that you've been working, you need to change, flexible working, all this kind of stuff. So just somebody in the office that's able to facilitate those conversations with you or for you, depending on the situation, I think is really, really important. Really, really important. But yeah, there's loads of things from yoga, and I know
so many different things.
So
Yeah,
many
it just in speaking about just specifically amenities that support employee health and well-being. So, I mean, it can be just a yoga mat and dedicated space to do yoga in. So it can be simple, or it could be bringing in a masseuse or a chiropractor or a therapist, you know, or having a dedicated meditation space or somewhere to relax, or, well, most importantly, outdoor space and proximity to outdoor space. I mean, we can't change the weather, but, you know, just any outdoor space helps. And then bringing nature inside, that's a huge one. And making our work environments a lot less harsh. I think COVID has done wonders for us in that sense, in that employees really want all of their home comforts now to kind of actually blend into their office space and to have those kinds of more comfortable areas.
Yeah, and I think I now work at a very big firm, and day one we got this HR packet which was about this big, and I am not at all confused as to what our HR offerings are. Boy howdy. And so I think a lot of workplace engagement with that is just being aware of what's there. I think a lot of us in this room probably work in a lot smaller firms. Rhiannon and I don't. But sometimes it's just difficult to understand, especially if you're new to this country. I had no idea what I was getting myself into with what employee benefits were. And I only, after many years, learned what EAPs were. So there's a whole thing about awareness of what has my company put in place, and then where can we go from there? And a lot of that should be employee engagement. So if people feel like they're missing something or they need something, again, to feel empowered to say that to your employer, and to have regular kind of check-ins to see if your employer is providing everything that you need them to as an individual. So I think there's a continuous back and forth, and yes, there is money associated with some of these things, but there are cost-free communicative exercises that you can have to make sure that you're in a good place, both yourself and your employer. Because they want to keep you, really. At the end of the day, they want to do everything they can to make sure that you're happy and productive as a secondary. But yeah.
And just doing something simple like an employee survey.
Yeah.
You know, figure out what your employees want,
Yeah.
what would make them happy, what would make them feel listened to, and that's a big step.
Yeah.
It is a big step, and that's like the individual self-awareness, but then the organization self-awareness basically comes into play with an employee survey, absolutely, and finding out what people want. There's also things, policies, having a look at the policies. So what is the flexible working policy? Well, now, what is the working from home policy? What are things like, when we get back into it, we're starting to now, but business travel, what's that look like? What's family? what are your thoughts on families and how that kind of working parents, what's leave like? So it's really diving into all these different parts of our lives, really, that make us who we are, but really, really important to have those conversations. Another thing you can do is a wellness action plan. Now, this is something that mental health first aiders learn about, and I'm sure HR as well. So you can actually sit individually and come up with a strategy that works for you. And that's when you can get into with your management things like flexible working, or I work better in the morning, or I work better in the evening, or these are my family commitments, or actually I've got something else going on in my life right now. Whatever that could look like, a myriad of things. So this is what I need to do, and this is what I need in my workplace. So it's having those conversations, but sometimes people work better if they have it all written down in a more formal way, and sometimes that can be really, really useful. And it also gives you a document to then refer back to, and then have some kind of record of conversations that have been had and plans that have been put in place. It's something that you can review periodically if those needs are still relevant, or if you need to change anything. So that's also a really good one that organizations can help with, so they understand employee well-being as well. And as you said, with surveys, what people actually need and what they want.
Yeah.
I get the feeling we're running close.
I was going to say, I feel like we're coming close to the Q&A time.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions at all in the audience? Yeah?
Oh, sure.
So I think working from home has given people the opportunity to have better work-life balance, because you can do a couple of hours of emails, get up, put a load of washing in the machine, go back, do some emails, and then hang it out, and it kind of balances your day-to-day tasks for your family and work. But I know a lot of people have struggled with also shutting off. So, for instance, at 5 o'clock or 5:30, you need a boundary to get up if you don't have a dedicated workspace at home, particularly, which is something I've struggled with. You're at the dining table. How do you just, okay, I put my laptop away, but there's a mental shift that doesn't always happen very easily to then saying, okay, let's forget about work. I now need to prepare dinner or what have you. So working from home is great, but there are challenges within that. So what have you found if you don't have a dedicated workspace at home to help people transition?
Oh, I love this one. This was me during the pandemic in a one-bed flat in London. Luckily, I was on my own, so I didn't have the added pressure of a partner for that dining table. But what I did is, so kind of like you mentioned, putting the laptop away. So I had a piece of furniture that was dedicated to my office space, and it shut away everything from files to the laptop, cables, everything. And so that was my ritual in the evening and in the morning to kind of signal that this is work time. But I think another good one that I've heard is we used to commute. So if you are working from home, and in London, that's often an hour. Let's be honest. And so it's actually going, okay, well, I've stopped at 5. I've put everything away, so visually my space is now a dining table. So I've signaled to myself this is no longer work. But actually, I have an hour or half an hour or 15 minutes. And it's not jumping immediately into the next task. It's going, okay, well, why don't I walk around the block? Or if you have a pet, go walk the dog. If with the kids, go and play in the park with your husband, your partner, whoever it is. Do something for that time instead of immediately. I think we're really quick to just jump to the next task, and it's almost retraining our minds to kind of look at our time differently and looking at our day a little bit differently. So try that. Maybe go for a nice walk. Take advantage of that time that you don't have to spend on the tube.
I was going to say the same thing. Just taking time to decompress. I think that I have an hour-long train journey, so I would take that to just kind of mentally try and wash everything away. So to listen to music or to a podcast, like I'm that weird person that laughs a lot on the train with my headphones in, because I'm like trying to kind of get the day out of myself and to move into like a personal, comfortable space. So yeah, walking for that hour is great, and doing something that you enjoy, that brings you joy, to get yourself into that sphere.
Yeah, I think also one thing that really helps me personally is variety. So not necessarily working from home all week, but if you don't have an office to go to, just finding somewhere else to work. It might be a library or a coffee shop, just mixing it up a little bit so that you're not spending the whole week at home in that same environment, and so that you have a variety of people around you. And so that's...
Yeah, no, I like that one. I think that one's, really, really good. Or if you're lucky enough to hot desk within your own flat, that's also a good one. It can change things up and have a little bit of variety there, I think.
Yeah, I was the same situation. I have a one-bed flat, and there was definitely times where I would roll out of bed, get up from one set of pajamas to my like day pajamas, straight to the desk.
Day pajamas.
But yeah, I think I also managed to, I was a bit of the opposite in the sense that a routine really kept me sort of a structured day, and I would stick to my 9 to 5. And then there was times sort of the first half of the initial sort of lockdown, I was sat in a corner with my desk, and then a few months went by that I actually changed the whole layout of the lounge room so I could put my desk next to the window and had it as a dedicated spot, but the sun like comes straight down, and it did a lot better for my mental health.
Yeah.
On
If
that
no
sense.
one's done that yet, that's the best place
Yeah.
you can put your desk. It's so
Put it next to the window.
satisfying. You will occasionally get like weird streaks of sunlight across your face on Zoom calls, but it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I think it's doing an audit of our spaces, and if you are going to continue working from home, really, really important.
Yeah.
So, to really figure out what do you want out of your space, what do you need it to be now, and set it up accordingly.
Also, one more thing, Kay, which you should be saying is work from abroad more.
Oh, yes.
Just
Big fan.
literally book a flight, go somewhere else for a week, get some sun just somewhere else while you work, if you can.
Yeah, no. I definitely second, third, and fourth that idea. Yeah, big one.
I think we might have we got time for one more question, if anyone has one? Yeah.
Hello. Just a quick one, going back to sort of organisations and policies and things like that. And obviously, there are a lot of companies out there that may be smaller or have been small and then grown quite quickly and maybe don't have these HR policies in place. How do you, as an employee, sort of approach that? Like, obviously, you were saying some people find it quite difficult to go and speak to their manager about day-to-day stuff. So how do you then take on your employer and say, like, we need to have these things in place, it's really important, without sort of then becoming that person that's kicking up a fuss kind of thing? Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes there is that culture, I still think, in some places where it's, oh, just let them get on with it and it's fine, and nothing's ever really discussed. So how do you, approach that and without then causing problems, I guess?
Oh, can I? Is that okay?
Oh, please.
So I'm in the lighting industry, and for the most part in London, it's a lot of smaller firms, so like under 30 people, and which yo-yo quite a lot, like especially in the last 10 years, like some firms have gone from 4 to a dozen to 2 dozen, and that, is really hard, because the idea of having a dedicated HR person is another person on the payroll. Even though it's really beneficial for everybody, it's hard to kind of justify that expense as an employer. And what myself and my other colleagues in the industry have found is that the most important thing you can do is speak as one. Is that, you going up to your manager and being like, hey, I don't feel like we've got a very good policy, sounds antagonistic, even if it's how you feel. I have been accidentally antagonistic about this before. I apologize in general. But if you can come up with a way to effectively communicate how you and the people around you at different levels feel about what you need from the company, I think it's just that. It's just having the trust that your voices together as employees will mean something to your managers. I think it's that. I think it's having that mentality that you're all in this together and you all feel like you need something. And I think that makes it a lot stronger and more palatable. And the answer might still be no, we don't have the resource for that. But I mean, all we can do is try.
And then they at least know that it's an issue. But like just something, even like creating your own employee survey, sending it around, getting the kind of responses and showing them to the employer. Also, I would say a good one is to, it's a little bit of work for you, but to do just a little bit of benchmarking and understand what do other companies have of the same scale, and just, or just ask friends or like other people in the industry, and just get to know what they have and kind of report that alongside your survey results. That's a pretty strong argument.
Yeah, I mean, a friend of mine is a freelance HR consultant. Like, that does exist. So you can go to people for specific policies, and they're good ones are hard to find, obviously, but that is something that they could look into, is that if you don't need someone there full time, you can at least say, hey, we have a lot of people at this company now, and we need to have a more unified approach to our HR or well-being or etc. And there was always space to have an expert look at things. It's not a great idea to have someone already within your organization do that, because having a fresh look is so key.
Absolutely. And I think the last thing I would say is highlight some of the benefits to the organization. Put it back on them and make it seem that, why is this good for you? Rather than just, why is it good for me? So coming at it from that perspective so that they can really see the benefits to them. And a lot of it is financial. And, don't want to sugarcoat it. It is business as well at the end of the day. Very aware of that. A lot of it is financial benefits to the organization. So I think that's important part. So shine the light on them rather than on yourself, and maybe that might help us. Is that it?
That's a wrap. Thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you again, Rhiannon, Kale and Kay, for giving us lots of insight and stuff to take back to think about. And
thank you.
Thanks everyone for joining.